важно, да, и поэтому мы еще приветствуем Льва Мурзенко, благодаря которому все, что скажет Ольга, мы сможем услышать на русском языке, хотя Ольга и будет говорить на английском.
Добрый вечер. Очень приятно оказаться у этих голубых экранов и увидеть Ольгу и всех вас. Точнее, вижу я только порядок слов и Ольгу. Ольга, последний раз мы виделись совсем в прошлой жизни уже. Мы виделись на фестивале книжном в Казани, когда только вышел русский перевод книги «Польская хонтология». Теперь мы встречаемся уже в совсем других условиях. Мы тоже находимся в неком переходном периоде. Давайте попробуем посмотреть из нашего переходного периода на, собственно, ту трансформацию, о которой идет речь в вашей книге. Так что же такое польская хонтология?
Polish hauntology is a phrase. I have in Polish actually used a term duchologia, which is a deliberately awkward translation of the French English term, because I wanted to distance myself from actual concept coined by Derrida. I have been closer to, well, I have arrived at this idea via culture writing, via Mark Fisher, via Adam Harper, Simon Reynolds. So it was music that first introduced me to the concept, but since it coincided with a project that I have conducted earlier during my anthropology studies, which included the memory of historical events as perceived through the lens of very early memory. So when the child's memory is being shaped around the age of 3 or 4, more or less. And it coincided that the most of my peers that I've been talking to for the purpose of this project that I have surveyed, I've been born in 1984. So they've been around the same time. We had similar memories related to the transformation era in Poland, which is symbolized by the year 1989, but it has actually been a process. And I'd like to show you some images from my presentation, if you don't mind. Is it okay if I do? Yes, I need to...
Было бы здорово, конечно. Это же визуальная антропология, как говорить без образов.
Yeah. Yes, so exactly, I have to share the screen. So yes, basically this is my presentation that introduces you to the concept of duchologia polska. So what happens is that it deals with the liminal period, which I think has been well described as, when we spoke in Kazan, many people referred to it as Polish perestroika, but it's only the first half of it, because it's, I have set the beginning of it around 86, which is related to certain plans to introduce more liberal policy by the Polish United Workers' Party, but without changing the political settings of the state itself. But the process that have been launched around that time and have continued until about 1994. It's a period of multi-faceted change of certain anarchy, of certain opening of certain possibilities, of redefining possibilities, anarchy in terms of lack of certain concepts being present in the law, in the society, in the political arrangement. So if everything was up for discussion, then everything was being negotiated and everything was in the state of certain flux. and many people have used their chances. Many people have made their careers in that time. Many people have lost everything because they owed everything to the stability of Polish People's Republic. But still, I paid special attention to the fact that it's the magic of numbers, symbols, and dates. So the symbolism attached to the year 1989 has overshadowed the fact that it has been a process. That was, in my personal opinion, very interesting also due to the fact that it has been remembered in a very, very blurry way. And it required of me actual archaeological work in very recent memory. It surprised me how such recent events were remembered so unclearly by so many people of various generations that I have spoken to, because many people had this photographic memory of the first free parliamentary elections in 1989, but the rest before that and later has been more of a blur, in which confusion between facts, dates, locations prevail. So my work focused on trying to rebuild it, to try to rebuild the image that has been, hence the name, hauntology, like chasing the specters, chasing ghosts, and also a bit like a spiritual seance. So this is this quick presentation. Mid-1980s mean certain liberation of, for example, passport policy, of access to international goods, to international travel, and also rising consumerist attitudes after the martial law period in Poland. But at the same time, these appetites for consumerism also linked to the fact that private enterprise has been allowed to a certain limited extent, still under state control. It has been hindered by limited possibilities posed by centrally controlled, centrally managed economy, which meant limited access to, for example, materials needed for production of certain very demanded goods. Yeah, this is an image, a photograph taken by David Chliński, a Canadian photographer who was a student in Krakow in about 1986. He traveled there for student exchange. And he was taking photographs of window displays of shops in Poland, but also in Hungary, in Czech Republic, for Czechoslovakia. But I think that it's he visited Soviet Union as well. So I think that on his website you can see some images from Moscow from the time as well. So this is a photo from Krakow that presents how this a certain demand for fashion has been it had to be satisfied using very limited means. So the photograph with this 80s new romantic style makeup is combined with some kind of DIY decoration made of whatever was actually available, because something more fancy was actually impossible to convey. I also deal with the myth and reality of 1989, and this is another photograph taken by David Kliński that for me symbolizes that moment and the wider period very well. It was taken in Krakow as well, and right now this street Karmelicka is like a showcase. It's fully renovated. It's also very expensive, but this lady is standing right next to a display of a music shop. One of the first private ones, but this dullness and like collapse around her, somebody who is I think craving some kind of pop magic in her life, but still is surrounded by this unbearable grayness of reality around her. I think that for me it's a photograph that symbolized 1989 very well. As well, of course, my personal memory of that is very limited because I remember better comics that I've been reading, but still I did my best to try and revisit this year as remembered by many others. And the end of that era was around 1994. And I have set this as a final date because of introductions of copyright laws that have been practically non-existent before that, or rather they applied to the reality of a country that didn't exist anymore. A state that didn't exist anymore. So the actual update took 5 years, and also in the advertising market, the advertising majors took over. The most prominent companies were the big agencies who replaced this some kind of DIY advertising, which was either awkwardly translated from international originals or made by local Polish companies on small budgets. So they have replaced it with actual professional campaigns developed by Polish art directors and Polish staff. And as an example, this is MTV Hits, but in Polish version. So because pirate cassettes, which I'm going to show later, they couldn't be sold anymore. So this Top of the Pops formula, in which you had cheaper front covers, have replaced them. So yeah. The main drive during the transformation period was ambition. It was aspiration. It was a need to catch up with the West, because it was like a catchphrase that has been repeated a lot, and I think that it hasn't been questioned at all. But usually it meant, like in case of similar political shifts and social shifts in many other countries in the world, which are peripheral to the center. So in the peripheries, it meant usually that it was trying to apply direct imitation of a certain lifestyle, but without the base that provided resources and something to construct on that this lifestyle was a result from. So it was rather sometimes, like in the case of this European businessman, it seemed a bit like cargo cult. So a belief that an actual dress and a set of manners or certain hobbies or sports have been seen as some sort of magic formula that would transform the DIY businessman of that period, like self-made fortunes, into professionals that would be no different from their Western peers. And in a very interesting book about the making of normalcy by visual anthropologist Magda Szczesniak, she examines how like private business owners in the 80s, they have developed their own fashion code that was based on some kind of imagined idea of what was aspirational, and this mainly included white socks, because it was something that was a distinctive element from the working class. So if you can afford to wear something white, then it means that probably you don't have to do any kind of work that is that involves dirt. But also they were associated with prestigious sports like tennis or golf. So a Polish businessman from mid to late 80s would be wearing white socks with a suit. And after 89, when lifestyle magazines appeared on Polish markets, they were introducing this development of normalcy and were telling people what was accepted and was not. And this white socks have become the butt of a joke for a long time, that it became a symbol of like misfired aspirations. And something provincial as well, something that belongs to the peripheries and not to this so-called civilized world. So, and this is, well, it says that it's 1990, but it's actually a bit earlier. I managed to find it's 1990 on a meme, but actually this photograph is a tiny bit earlier, but still it shows a certain horizon of aspirations towards good life at that time, and it involved everything that was private. So if anything anything that could include like retreat into private life and somehow like walling oneself in, so having a private business rather than being employed somewhere, using a private car instead of public transport, and of course living in an individual house rather than in a block. So everything that was the opposite of the much despised collective became a kind of horizon of aspirations for many people of the emerging middle class. Yes, and obviously film and television. This is a screen cap from first Polish soap opera called Labirynthia, and it was more realistic rather than aspirational, and it has presented in a quite believable way the customs, behaviors, also certain not necessarily legal background behind businesses and fortunes, and of privatizing state enterprise. So it is a very, very interesting soap opera that can be watched as a semi-documentary, but it was the last one of that kind, because TV series that came after that, they were seen as something that is supposed to be educational. So that is supposed to teach people how to behave and how to introduce these codes of normalcy that I have mentioned before. So if somebody was, well, in Labyrinthia, you could see people doing things that were not necessarily legal or ethical, and they weren't symbolically punished for it. Whereas in a later series, like in Klan or Złotopolsce TV dramas, they if anybody did anything wrong, because these series were didactic, they would have to be met with some kind of symbolic punishment. Yes, and a very, very interesting facet of this period is personally for me this something that I call the victory of the non-professional, and my second book called Wyroby, which can be roughly translated as goods, like self-made goods, is dedicated to that. So it's dedicated to vernacular design and engineering. And in Duchologia, I have interviewed certain artists and designers who, before '89, they've been very, very strongly reliant on the state economy, and also on the system that's required of them. For example, having their projects approved by commissions consisting of other artists, of other designers, and professors. So it had its pros and cons, because obviously it required it included a lot of gatekeeping, obviously, and it meant that an access to becoming a visual artist who would, for example, make posters wasn't available to everybody. But at the same time, because of these levels of gatekeeping, you could rely on the quality, for example, of cinema or theater posters. So this it was after Polish School of Poster, but certain settings, certain environment in which some kind of artistic freedom, but also at the same time, or certain standards, it existed, and visual materials were mostly designed professionally. It wasn't like 100% case, because there was a gray zone in which non-professional design was also developing, semi-private or like closer to some kind of local craft. And I write about it more extensively in my second book, Wyroby. So there have been actually holes in this monolithic system of state-approved artists and designers. But also they have been, especially in the 80s, when there was when the economy had to rely to a larger and larger extent on the private sector and micro manufacturers who had to provide goods that weren't available and they weren't possible to be provided by the state economy because of certain supply shortages or delays or difficulties in distribution during the economic crisis. So this is when the small private enterprises have seen their chance, and also they have thrived in these conditions because sometimes they've been providing goods that were basically necessary to survive. So, for example, like some kind of small objects made of plastic. If you wanted to buy a toothbrush, for instance, or a hairpin, then this is what you could buy in small kiosks, or, for example, clothing have been to a large extent taken up by the private sector. Yeah, this is one of my favorite objects. I call them ugly Mickeys. Fads and fashions were an area in which obviously the planned economy couldn't catch up with because it was giant. It was functioning much slower. So it was very utilitarian. It was providing things that were necessary and not necessarily the things that were fashionable. So this is why the micro manufacturers have been responding to these needs. And for example, well, obviously copyleft Disney character gadgets, or for example the Star Wars characters, everything obviously bootleg because there was no possibility of licensing that even. They were made in some kind of small garage sized factories. And especially the one on the right, it's well, like a Polish bootleg version of a toy called Tricky Trapeze that has been sold in the United States since the 60s and licensed to many entertainment companies, not only Disney, but also Warner Brothers and others. So it doesn't have to be Mickey, it can be Bugs Bunny that is on this trapeze. But someone who had an imported toy like this in Poland has decided to make an equivalent. The plastic that it was made of was quite often recycled. So this is why you can recognize that it has this kind of marble texture. It's when you touch it, it's rough. It has faded colors. The white is never as clear and pure as or red here. They're never as clear as pure as in new plastic, but they always have this kind of grayish quality. And they're not painted very thoroughly, but for me, they are like a screenshot of the era. So you have this imitational quality, you have imitation, you have aspiration, you have DIY, you have these bricolage elements, so that if you want to achieve something, you need to use things and methods and solutions that are available right around you, that are at hand, in order to make something that isn't fully like something that you like, but it actually it satisfies your aspirations. It satisfies somehow, is an equivalent good enough for here and now. And this is, well, the Polish School of Poster, well, last days of that. The actual Polish School of Poster is actually rather refers to the 60s, but these are still cinematic posters that are made by professional artists and are more like variations on a theme. So they don't like correspond in 100% with the content of the film, but are more inspired by them. And obviously, this system has completely collapsed. In 1989, this commission system, this that I have described before, in which projects were made by professional artists and approved by commissions. So this was replaced by designs like this. These are the pirate tapes that have been released without any copyright. Until 94, it was possible. So basically copied from a CD purchased by somebody, and with some kind of quickly makeshift design tape cover. And they have been they were very cheap. They were available pretty much everywhere, not only in purely music shops, but also sold on the streets. When in 89, very, very liberal laws related to trade were introduced, then basically street trade has spilled onto the streets of all Polish cities and towns. And for some time, you could see street sellers selling everything because it didn't even pay off to sell it to the shop, because the demand for everything was so high. And also the demands for things like popular books in translation, or music, like international music, like the one like the ones presented here. So the demand for them was very high, and practically any kind of business related to distribution of culture for a certain period was very profitable. Yeah, and as I said, in 94, the copyright laws were introduced. But in the meantime, you can tell that the visual landscape has been professionalizing, because it was all a process. So in the world of advertising, what I mentioned before, the poorly translated TV commercials that people were laughing at, because the issue was that certain international ad agencies heads were believing that because it's a new market, then pretty much everything can be sold, and that the Polish society can be sold anything. And the Poles proved not to be that naive. And we've been laughing a lot at commercials, and many of them were seen as unrealistic, and having that they couldn't even sell the dream, they couldn't sell the aspiration, because they had so much nothing to do with the actuality of Polish life, that they have become the subject of jokes instead. And certain products also have been refused on the basis of that the advertising campaigns, not only due to prices and the buying power of an average Pole, but also because of the advertising campaigns that that were seen as selling something inaccessible, and something like unrealistic, and something like beyond the purchasing possibilities. And well, it wasn't that easy as it seemed to like sell everything, or to create a new need. it took more time, I think, to develop that. But after 94, you had in most advertising agencies, you had Polish art directors who were familiar with the specifics of local market and the needs and preferences of the average Polish customer. So instead of awkward commercials, we began to receive actually funny and witty ones that have succeeded as something that fueled the fueled consumerism. So it happened only in the mid-90s, also when the economic situation stabilized a little bit in comparison with the earlier years. And also the phenomenon that developed in the early 90s was a music genre called disco polo, which was as informed by Italo disco, popular back then, but also by synth pop and artists like OMD and Depeche Mode, but also by certain more contemporary or folk songs preserved by the Polish diaspora in the United States. And forgotten in Poland, but imported by and sold like back in Poland. So it was an interesting case of actual folklore being preserved abroad and then returned to the actual community. And also 1980s hits from the Soviet Union like Bieleye Rozy were also very popular here. So a mixture of all that, but also certain, like I think 60s sentimental songs have to be introduced into the mix. So it was something more rather than a direct translation of, it was neither folklore nor a direct translation of the then popular disco music into Polish. But it was something, an interestingly vernacular genre that had its own ambitions. And many of these bands wanted to play pop and rock, but they had not enough, I think, technical skill, but also they at some point decided, even if they did, they at some point decided to do something that paid off more commercially. This is how a certain market, like a giant underground parallel market to the music majors, developed, selling tapes in quite DIY, nearly punk way. So copying the tapes on their own at home using like 10 tape recorders and copying the tapes one by one and selling them directly from the street. And the most popular releases were sold in millions of copies. But from an aesthetic point of view, because the mainstream Polish culture was very aspirational, and because of that, it was quite obsessed with following certain quite tight standards of ambition. Then something as I think like semi-professional, but also something that embraced entertainment so blatantly as disco polo was unacceptable for them, and also because it was seen as something that represented the village culture the countryside, the province, and this is why it was seen as not aspirational enough and something beyond a certain level of acceptance. And this is why it developed its own parallel circuit of culture, of distribution that exceeded in popularity the proposals of the major. It has developed in a yet different direction. The genre of disco polo still exists, but now it has a completely different formula than it had in the 90s. It's not seen as some kind of, it carries no anathema, but rather it is present. It has its own TV channels. It is present in the mainstream culture circuit. So right now it's basically popular dance music. But in the 90s, it was quite strongly stigmatized. Yes, but also at the same time, the mainstream and commercial art and entertainment have been surprisingly informed by the underground aesthetics. So by the art tendencies from the late 80s, like the new expression or by street art. And many representatives of the underground, of the counterculture, have joined either the advertising or tried their luck in commercial art direction. So this is why the aesthetics of the 90s have this, they are resemblant a bit of the movements of the 80s in Great Britain. So quite similarly to what the Face or ID did. So Poland had its own equivalent in the 90s. That it was well, magazines or basically projects like this were selling in a volume that that guaranteed like recognizability. It wasn't underground anymore. And also projects like this were also present in the television, because many countercultural artists had their own TV programs. So it was one of the most surprising but also the most inspiring facets of the era, so the underground going overground. And yes, this is pretty much the legacy of the 90s, because I remember, Michael, that you wanted to ask me what changed since we have spoken last time. And what happens is that this term duchologia, it has become some kind of umbrella term for everything that resembles the aesthetics or the mood, the general atmosphere of the early 90s. Not only this strange spectral era in between, but also some kind of nostalgic 90s, or sometimes even like the aesthetics of early internet. So I think that everything that is as nostalgic as it is unclear and blurry and a little bit uncanny is now in Polish can be described as duchologiczne. So I think that that the phrase has expanded beyond its original original definition. And this screen capture that I'm presenting here to you, it's a scene from a YouTube series, Kraina Grzybów, The Mushroom Land, which has been made by Polish artist Wiktor Stribok, made in a style that was supposed to be look like a haunted videotape or some kind of found footage from a pirate TV station from the early 90s. And because the original productions from that time, from the early 90s. They were so strange and sometimes so surreal that many people were actually convinced that they have seen Mushroomland on some kind of ephemeral TV station in 1993. So this is for me a good example of well, like the ultimate inbuilt strangeness of liminal periods, in which sometimes it is difficult to draw some kind of direct line between the real and the unreal. And yep, that's, I can stop screen sharing now. That's the end of my presentation. So I guess we can come back to our discussion.
Михаил, вас не слышно. Да. Включите, пожалуйста, микрофон.
I cannot hear you.
Да, спасибо, Ольга, большое за презентацию. Я хотел бы немного прояснить для слушающих, что вы вкладываете в термин духология или хонтология. Вы ссылаетесь на Марка Фишера. Марк Фишер под идеей вот этого призрака, который из прошлого, он такой размытый, какой-то образ нашего прошлого, все время вкладывал еще смысл нереализованного будущего. То есть для него прошлое было всегда очень связано с идеей будущего. То есть хонтология версии Марка Фишера – это не только то, что уже закончилось, но и то, что не реализовалось. Вот в том материале, в который вы так глубоко погрузились, какие нереализованные возможности будущего вы видите?
I think that duhologia is very much about that, and this is and it very, very strongly meets Mark Fisher's definition. As recently as yesterday, I had a talk about the architecture of the 90s, and that in Poland it referred to a certain hope for like a well-developed and dynamic and modern state, but what happens is that there's sometimes very, very bold architecture that involved like very, very original forms and very bright colors. It stood out from the monotony of the landscape to the point that sometimes it was and still is perceived by many people as an eyesore. But back in the 90s, sometimes it was seen by people as some kind of well, embodiment of normalcy, that this is what a normal country is supposed to look like. So I think that there was, yes, I think that this unfulfilled hope for the future, it usually was synonymous with the term normalcy, that like we want to live in a normal country, and normal meant like welfare, certain peace, like certain stability. And I think that that this was a certain hope that was so strong in the 90s that I believe that many people actually lived in the reality of that hope, like in parallel to the actuality, that they knew that, okay, yes, we have to survive because soon it's gonna be like that. So I think that this is this unfulfilled future factor that I can see very strongly, like hopes of living in whatever that was supposed to mean a normal place in the world.
Понятно, но вместе с нормализацией пришел, собственно, к нам Марк Фишер. То есть нормализация предполагает то, что мы все сейчас находимся в этом ситуации хонтологии, неспокойного воспоминания прошлого, потому что нету будущего. Как известно, капитализм победил на всем земном шаре, мы все находимся в условиях борьбы за выживание. Мы все должны получать гранты, как организаторы нашей сегодняшней, например, встречи, или мы должны зарабатывать деньги, то есть продавать книги, писать книги, получать гонорары. То есть мы все вброшены как бы в рынок. Об этой ли нормализации идет речь? Или вы вкладываете в понятие нормализация, точнее, вот эта темная сторона нормализации, предполагали ли вы ее, когда занимались своим исследованием?
Nobody expected that. Nobody expected that. I think that for many people, it meant the possibility of to live on a certain level of things being affordable, of being able to plan forward, for example. So things that, well, are beyond usually our imagination right now, I think, regardless of the place we're living in. But I think that a sense of normalcy, as imagined in the 90s, meant I think that probably the closest image I can come up with was like Bill Clinton's era America. So I think that some kind of fairly predictable middle class world. I think that this is what was seen as this imagined normalcy. Yeah.
Очень жалко для русских читателей, что не вошло в презентацию все то обилие визуального материала, которое Ольга собрала в своей книге. Но я бы хотел, может быть, немного Ольге даже рассказать о русском восприятии книги «Польская хонтология». Во-первых, показать вот в экран один такой разворот, не знаю, насколько видно, разворот, посвященный самопальным таким до фотошоп обложкам жанровой литературы. Тут в уголке стоит логотип Phantom Press, то есть вот такая удивительная связь, что издательство Phantom Press, современное русское издательство, когда-то начиналось как филиал польского такого кооперативного проекта, совместного проекта. Вообще в названии «Польская хонтология» для русского уха есть как бы два акцента таких. С одной стороны, книга становится еще более хонтологичной, потому что в этих обложках или в этих фотографиях мы узнаем что-то смутно знакомое. То есть это немного похоже на наши 90-е, но такие наши 90-е, немного написано другим шрифтом, но все очень похоже. То есть есть такая двойная хонтологичность этой книги для русского глаза. С другой стороны, в выражении «польская хонтология» есть такой как бы оттенок, знаете ли, тоже немного вот самопальности. В позднем Советском Союзе были такие пословицы, например, «Курица не птица, Болгария не за граница». То есть Польша, польские джинсы, польская жвачка. Это был такой западный консюмеристский продукт, но как бы не настоящий Запад, такой Запад-субститут второго уровня. И в этом смысле польская хонтология, как польские джинсы, это как бы хонтология, но такая польской сборки, с одной стороны. С другой стороны, как я уже говорил, мне кажется, мы все уже оказались в одном глобальном хонтологическом пространстве, во многом за счет того, что мы все, конечно, вброшены в интернет. Особенно мы вброшены в интернет сейчас. Не случайно Марк Фишер, с которого начинается ваша книга, считал, что интернет – это технология, которая сама по себе хонтологична, потому что она предполагает гигантское количество неотпускания прошлого, технологии неотпускания прошлого. То есть прошлое существует с нами все время в пространстве сети интернет. Поэтому у меня вопрос такой, как вы оцениваете свою книгу, которая написана в 2016 году сейчас, насколько этот материал может быть отпущен уже, насколько вот то, о чем вы говорите, дизайн 90-х, эстетика 90-х, уже упаковано, заняло свое место в бесконечном таком хонтологическом ряду, польском, русском, болгарском, английском, неважно. И вот что меняет современность в перспективе взгляда на этот ваш исследовательский проект?
I think that the more time, the further away I am from the release of the book, the more I feel stuck in some kind of permanent 1989. I have a feeling that I will never actually let go of it, because it's not only that I discover further and further material and I can apply like the same research apparatus and same analysis to new phenomena, but also I see contemporary phenomena that seem resemblant of the 1990s. And the more things from the more period pieces I read, the more like original publications from that time, the more I feel like we're living in some kind of repeated reality. For example, well, as an anthropologist that has been also studying contemporary folklore and contemporary myths, I can, for example, see that the pandemic has relaunched or made people rediscover urban legends or certain myths that have become like a building material for conspiracy theories that are prevalent now. And for me, it feels like a very, very strong déjà vu, because these are the things that have been collected and written down by researchers of contemporary folklore in the early 90s. I keep writing a lot of things. Earlier this year, I had my podcast as well, dedicated to contemporary folklore and how to research that. And it seems to me that that it is a bit like a parallel reality, that there are many similarities between the liminal period of the transformation and the most likely liminal period that we are living right now. The times of instability probably produce similar states of mind, and also like similar cultural patterns. So I think that, as I said, the further I move away from the release of the book, the deeper I get stuck in it.
Позвольте задать вопрос продолжающий, да?
Конечно.
Да, спасибо. У меня, в общем, да, вопрос продолжающий о том, что мы возвращаемся в эти 90-е. Смотрела на рекламу, которую вы показывали 90-х годов, и кажется, что она была сделана для таких маленьких сообществ. То есть она была узко направлена на узкие аудитории. Затем наступили 2000-е, какое-то представление, видимо, о глобальной культуре и глобальные вот эти рекламные акции, которые все можно продать всем. А теперь получается, что этот мейнстрим, да, условный, он присваивает себе опыт 90-х годов и опять начинает работать на какие-то маленькие аудитории и маленькие сообщества. И что это такое было в 2000-е, что это просто был шаг в сторону, а теперь мы возвращаемся на какую-то правильную колею.
I think that it is possible, because it is and it isn't, because I'm wondering to which extent. I think that this is something that I would have to examine further, but I find this subject very, very interesting. To which extent the global and the local are only masks, and to which extent the exchange of things and tendencies and some kind of units of culture is taking place on a yet different level. I think that it's very, very difficult to tell, but I have a feeling that at the same time, it's more and less difficult to market something like to a different community, to a different society. If, for example, I look at the popularity of K-pop in Poland, and I see it as a transfer. I don't know to which extent I'm supposed to see that like some kind of because I think that it has first emerged spontaneously on the internet, and only later it was followed up by the global market powers. If I am right to guess, but I have a feeling that we can tell that in certain cases, I think that the grassroots comes first. I have a feeling that, and only later it is being discovered. That I think that right now it is interesting because I think that these smaller communities, as you mentioned, I think that I would associate them with some kind of like innate wisdom, some kind of or intuition of a hive mind. I mentioned like advertising in the very, very early 90s in Poland, and global advertising agencies that were believing that basically anything can be sold in Poland because people just are hungry for new goods. And it proved not to be true. That, for example, when there was the very, very famous case, or maybe notorious, that a TV commercial for the Milky Way bar, it was met with outrage in Poland because it involved a child who was like breaking the Milky Way bar and throwing it in the milk. And the Polish audience received it as, hey, you're not supposed to play with food. You're supposed to eat it. It's, it's expensive and your parents are working for it. So it was seen as some kind of like disrespectful for Polish parents who are supposed to buy these sweets for their child. So this is how the one of the cases in which it proved that it wasn't true that you can sell anything to the Polish audience only by showing a piece of clever advertising, because sometimes like it didn't resonate with the local custom. And sometimes I have a feeling that you have like various forces at play between this global and the local, and it doesn't and I think that like within the reality of late capitalism, I think that this dynamic between these powers at play, I have a feeling that it will be a very, very interesting thing to observe.
Ольга, может быть, расскажите пару слов о своей второй книге. Вот по-русски переводчик замечательно перевел название «Вырубы». Несколько версий было: «Самопал», «Гаражная экономика». То есть мы приблизительно понимаем контур как бы тем, о которых вы пишете в этой книге. Но вот пару слов подробнее о вырубах.
Самопал, yes. Yeah. I think that it's well, yeah. I like this one. It's difficult to see. It's kind of natural to translate it to Russian, but not so into English. Yeah, I think that it's in German it would be Bastern. I guess. So yes, it's interesting how certain, well, these books has 2 years now, and I think that I explore the subject matter of it increasingly so, because I think that well, it deals with, as I said, like vernacular engineering and vernacular design. So things that emerge spontaneously out of a need and using materials that are available at hand. So it's a bit like, well, bricolage activity. And I wrote there about both like 1960s, but also today's vernacular engineering. So both people who are trying to, both people who were building their own tractors, or also contemporary people who are trying to find ways to hack and repair things that have this planned obsolescence, so that are trying to kind of bypass planned obsolescence. So engineering is one part, but other are like garden decorations. While I was in Kazan, I photographed, Masha showed me some tire swans, rubber tire swans. So I was doing also research on garden decorations like that. And I don't know if you are aware, but these tire swans, they originate from Australia from the 1950s. So they have quite a long biography, and they're like a global phenomenon. So I was also researching the distributions of these ideas, because sometimes by some kind of cosmic coincidence, I don't know yet how to explain it, that the same idea for some kind of solution or some kind of decoration is applied in 2 completely different places in the world, but in a similar period. So it's like some simultaneous activating of certain ideas. So I think that the subject matter of this book is primarily ingenuity, not creativity, but rather ingenuity, and trying to find solutions. So a bit like DIY design, DIY engineering. So that's the subject of my second book.
Ольга, спасибо большое. Мне вот уже дают знак организаторы, что мы уже много проговорили. Я очень рад был вас видеть. Лично я считаю, что и первая, и вторая книга, к сожалению, я не читаю по-польски, но я попрошу коллег из «Характера» все равно прислать польский как бы PDF. Это такая диалогия о поиске альтернативных видов жизни в капитализме. То есть это не контр, конечно, капитализм, а такой альтер-капитализм. Мне кажется, в России всегда более популярны, более радикальные решения, как бы, чем предлагаете вы, но тем не менее очень интересный ход вашей мысли, очень интересный материал. Тем, кто еще не листал русское издание польской хонтологии, очень советую посмотреть хотя бы на картинки пока, и можно только поздравить польских коллег, что у них есть Ольга Дренды, и таких исследователей очень не хватает русскому материалу. Большое спасибо, что вы включились к нам. Большое спасибо «Порядку слов» за идею вообще это все устроить. Спасибо.
Михаил, Ольга, Лев, спасибо большое. Мы приглашаем петербуржцев в «Порядок слов» за книгой, а не петербуржцев в интернет-магазин от Маргинема за книгой.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
Ольга,
inviting. Thank you.
Новых книг ждем.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Все, спасибо, до свидания.